Y'all know that I love a short podcast and I love to learn about women in history. So when I learned about the podcast Womanica, I had to share it. Hi, I'm Andy Smiley, the Friendly Podcast Guide. I'm a mom who uses podcasts to fight the boredom and loneliness of motherhood and to entertain my kids when I need a break. And I want you to be able to use podcasts in these ways too. But it can be overwhelming to try and find a podcast you or your kids will enjoy in the thousands of shows that are out there. That's where I come in. Each week, I talk about different podcasts with topics ranging from parenting to pop culture and everything in between. My episodes are short and they answer your questions about the show, so you'll know if it's a good fit for you or your kids or not. Now, let's talk podcasts. Jenny Kaplan, the host, describes the show like this. Thinking back to our history classes growing up, we had one question. Where are the ladies at? Enter Womanica. In just 5 minutes a day, learn about different incredible women from throughout history. Before we learn more about the vibe of Womanica, we're going to take a quick break to talk about my guide to help you create a podcast trailer in less than 2 hours. Your podcast needs a trailer. It doesn't matter if you haven't launched your podcast yet or if you've had a podcast for 10 years. But I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, I've heard that podcast trailers are helpful, but I don't have time to set aside to make that happen. And that's where you're wrong. Making a podcast trailer doesn't have to take weeks. You can create a beautiful podcast trailer in less than 2 hours that will get potential listeners to start listening to your show and keep listening. All you have to do is follow my step-by-step podcast trailer guide. Go through each of the 8 steps, and by the end, you'll have an awesome podcast trailer. Grab this guide in the link in the show notes. Now we get to hear from Jenny as she talks about the wide scope of women she talks about on the show and fun themes they use to group them together. Jenny, thank you so much for being here today. I cannot wait to hear more about Womanica. But first, can you introduce yourself a little bit to my listeners?
Sure. Thank you so much for having me. I'm Jenny Kaplan. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Wonder Media Network, which is an audio-first media company. Our mission is to amplify underrepresented voices. We do a lot of shows, particularly around women's stories, but underrepresented voices more broadly. And that's sort of half of our business. And then the other half is we create podcasts and other kinds of audio for businesses, large and small, to help with their communication storytelling goals.
Awesome. And very needed. Podcasts, well, I love podcasts. And so when a business has a podcast, I'm pretty likely to listen to it. So I'm sure that your businesses are more successful. The businesses you help are more successful because of their podcast. At least that's what I'm saying.
It's a great way to communicate. And I think fundamentally that storytelling is how we connect as human beings, as people. And so if we can do that a little bit better at work and, on our commutes home, then great. I think we're all better for it.
I completely agree. So let's dive into Womanica. Why did you start this podcast?
So I started this podcast actually with my sister as my co-creator here of this show. And we were just thinking a lot about we've always loved history and thinking about sort of our history classes growing up, it just felt like we didn't, you'd learn about like one woman every chapter or something. It was very rare to really understand women's role in history. And that just didn't quite feel right. And so we wanted to create a show where we're revealing, the real life Marvel universe of women throughout history and around the world who did amazing things at different times. So some women we every month of this show is themed, and some of the themes are inspiring, like pioneers, artists, people who did things first. And some are much more complicated. We've done villainesses, we've done all sorts. We've covered multiple pirate queens. It's just we really wanted to figure out how to show in a way that feels entertaining, in addition to informative, the impact that women have had throughout history.
Yes. I truly, I did a whole episode about women in history, like podcasts back, I think in March, because March is Women History Month, something like that.
Mhm.
And it was so much fun doing the research for that episode, finding cool women doing cool things in history, especially because most of the time I didn't know about them. So it was learning all of these new, cool, fun, fascinating people. And your podcast does that in a great way because I love a short podcast, which is why I make a short podcast.
Totally. Yeah. Every episode is, 5-ish minutes, which we really wanted to create something that didn't feel like it was a huge time suck to add into your routine. Especially it's a daily show. So if you want to listen, finding 5 minutes in a day, that's totally doable. Finding 45 minutes a day, you probably already have things you're listening to, or you're doing other stuff. You have other things on your mind. But adding something that's 5 minutes a day is really, really easy it's an easily consumable kind of show.
Yes. Well, and a fun habit, right? Like a fun 5-minute habit that's easy to add and you'll look forward to every day.
I hope so. That's the goal.
Yes. So what do you want people to get out of your podcast, like listening to your podcast every day?
I think there are a couple of different things. I think it's really, really valuable to just hear the stories of these different women and the many, many, many different paths that are available to all of us. I think, we've highlighted women who found the thing that made them famous when they were tiny, when they were kids, and we found people who had many different careers over time and did the thing that made them famous when they were 80. Like there's such a vast array of experiences. And I think that it's something that can be really inspiring on a personal level to think about all the different opportunities available to each of us to find something that we're passionate about, something that we're good at. So I think on a personal level, that is something that I hope people get out of it. I also think it's informative and also really exciting to think about how these different women breathed life into different eras of time around the world, throughout time, how they had this huge impact that just isn't what we typically learn or typically see when we're talking about, history, when we're reading books, sitting in class, whatever it is. It's just a whole layer of texture and fact that has been missing, I think, historically in our classes and our education system. And so they're fun, they're entertaining, and it helps to show the reality of the world and how women have been at the core of all kinds of different change over time, not just like on the margins.
Yeah. And sometimes we forget that, right? Because of the way that our textbooks are written, and having that reminder, that daily reminder and that daily inspiration is such a lovely, wonderful thing. So I'm really grateful for the podcast that you make.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, at the core also, like, I just hope it's entertaining. That's really, I hope that it's like fun to listen to. That's really what I hope people get out of it.
That makes sense. Well, when something's entertaining, then you come back to it, right? Which is the goal, is to help people listen and learn about more than just one woman, right? In one day.
Yeah, totally.
So you were describing the show, well, in many different ways, with like entertaining and also inspiring. What words would you use to describe the vibe of the show?
The vibe of the show, I would say, is it's like hearing an interesting story being told to you. So I'm the host. I tell their story, and then it's sound designed with music, sometimes with different clips. It sort of depends on different soundscapes. It depends on the woman in question and the time in which she lived. But it's easy to listen to as sort of like a rundown of this person's story.
Okay. Yeah, totally. So this is my favorite question to ask, but I know it's kind of hard, so I like to give you a second to prep. So it's, what's your favorite episode or couple of episodes? But before you answer, so you can have a second, where can people find you and your show?
People can find Womanica wherever they listen to podcasts, or we're on Instagram and Facebook at Womanica Podcast. You can find all of the Wonder Media Network podcasts if you just look up Wonder Media Network wherever you listen. Yeah, that's how you can find us.
Perfect. Okay, so now
I'm still thinking about my favorite episodes.
Yes, you can take all the time you need. It's a big question.
I'm gonna challenge the question. I'm gonna answer maybe in a way that's cheating because it's really hard to pick single episodes. But
You're good.
Every month of the show has a different theme, and the themes are so fun. Like this summer we did adventurers, we did folk heroes. We are doing an episode all about sort of like goddesses, different female deities throughout time, which is a whole different take, not so, sort of not necessarily real women. But we've done tastemakers, trendsetters, and now I'm just listing a million of them. But it's really hard to pick one theme because within each, it's just amazing to hear about the different women who've done things over time. We've covered a lot of spies. I love covering the spies. I really do feel like it's like you're in a superhero movie, but instead you're hearing about all these different contemporaries who were changing the world without us knowing. So I think if you want to check out the show, you should just find a theme that seems interesting to you, that speaks to you, and really pick any episode. I can't possibly pick a favorite.
I understand, especially when you're making one like it's a daily show, so that makes a lot of sense. Well, and the beauty is that you can find a theme that you like, and you can listen to like 5 episodes in less than an hour. So that sounds like a great fit.
Totally.
Because most of my listeners are moms, I like to ask, is your podcast okay for little ears, or is it one to have headphones in?
It is okay for little ears. For episodes, I would say that we generally will give a warning if there's anything in an episode that isn't necessarily appropriate. A lot of these women, throughout history were in wars or were in different things that it's up to obviously each parent's discretion what they feel comfortable with their kid hearing. But on the whole, I would say it is pretty safe for little ears.
Totally. Well, truly, I like the idea. I think I'm going to incorporate this into my morning like carpool drive to take the kids to school, because 5 minutes and then we can all learn about a cool woman in history. And so that was kind of my thought. Like, is this okay for carpool?
I think so. Yeah. I mean, again, I don't want to get in trouble. Everyone should decide, listen totally. and make your own decision. But I've heard feedback from parents who have incorporated into carpool because they love just starting the day with a different example of a different woman from history who's done cool stuff. So I think I've gotten a lot of feedback that people do use it that way. So I feel pretty comfortable saying it's safe.
Well, there you go. Perfect. Well, and that warning is perfect in my opinion for me. Like if all I need is like hey, this might be not the best fit, so go re-listen to something, or like listen to this first before you listen to it with your kids. That's all I need to be like, oh, okay, like I'll find something else or whatever. Like that's.
I think also there's some themes that are like obviously, some themes that are more adjacent to conflict where you would maybe want to think twice, depending on your style of parenting.
Totally. Okay. Is there anything else that you want to add that we haven't touched on yet?
I don't think so. I just hope everyone checks out Womanica. And if you have any ideas of people we haven't covered or any comments, please let me know.
Fabulous. Well, I will make sure to link all of your stuff so that people can find you exactly where they want to. And yeah, I'm so excited for all of my listeners to start listening to your show because it is delightful.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
I'm so excited to add this to my carpool routine with my kids. If you know someone who could use Womanica in their life, will you share this episode with them? Also, if you've been putting off making a podcast trailer, but you know it's time, grab my step-by-step podcast trailer guide. Talk to you soon. so excited to add this to my carpool routine. Holy cow.